Phishing APTs, a detailed analysis by Shannon Kane for my fall 2018 Network Security Final Project. What is an APT? An APT is an advanced persistent threat. It's a computer network attack that is secretive, which a person or group manages to get unauthorized access to a network and remains undetected for an extended period of time. What is a phishing attack? A fraudulent attempt to obtain sensitive information such as usernames, passwords, credit card details that is done by disguising the sent email as a trustworthy thing, such as an email being sent by a professor which might have a subject line that you've used previously before. How spear phishing works. Spear phishing works in a way that a hacker targets a company using social networks or other internet data. He finds employees with access to company data systems. Then, following the social trail, he identifies other people the employee may know. A false but recognizable email address created to impersonate a colleague or boss. Then a personalized email is sent to the employee from the fake address with a link of attachment. The email passes the spam filter and arrives at the employee's inbox. The email is opened because they know the sender. A link is clicked or attached and opened, which could have your personal data being used to log into. And the hacker uses the back door to steal information. A personal example of a spear phishing attack would be back in September, Wentworth got hit with an array of emails from different people. For myself, the email came from one of my advisors who had been emailing about a class. I know not to click on most things, especially if it requires you to log in, because I know the school doesn't make you do that. One of my friends also received the same email, but it came at like a normal time for a professor to be sending an email, so he opened it, and when he opened it, he clicked in and logged in because it looked exactly like the Wentworth login screen, and as soon as he logged in to this email that was sent by a professor, supposedly, all of a sudden he started receiving emails from people he had emailed in the past few years, stating that they got an email from him, but they couldn't open it, and it was the same email, and his information was basically stolen at that point. This went on for quite a bit of time at Wentworth, with them using the dean's email, the different professors' emails, different students' emails. Anyone that they would send an email to also received an email after you opened this email attack. The first APT I looked at, though, was APT-1, which was AKA the Comment Crew. Now, the suspect for the Comment Crew was China's People's Liberation. And the General Staff Department's 3rd Department, which is mostly common, known by the military unit cover designator. The target sectors were basically everyone, but basically anyone in a business type field, but specifically information technology, aerospace, public administration, satellites, telecommunications, scientific research and consulting, energy, transportation, construction, manufacturing, engineering services, high-tech electronics, international organizations, legal services, media, advertising and entertainment, navigation, chemicals, financial services, food and agriculture, healthcare, metals, mining, and education. So it was pretty much anyone who is anyone that has access to an online account. The overview of this is it was based in China, or based out of China. It has systemically stolen hundreds of terabytes of data from at least 141 organizations and demonstrated the capability and intent to steal from dozens of organizations simultaneously. What the groups primarily focused on was compromising organizations across a board of a range in English-speaking countries. The infrastructure implies a large organization with at least a dozen human operators. Now, it might be a dozen human operators, but it also doesn't mean that there's not thousands as well. They are not sure the range of people. The associated malware used with this was Trojan.ecliptus, Backdoor.Barkiofork, Backdoor WakeMeNap, Trojan.Downbot, Backdoor.Dalbot, Backdoor Override, Trojan Bad Name, Backdoor Willis. And the attack vectors, most commonly observed method was through spear phishing, so kind of like what I was talking about earlier, where it would come from a recognized email, and meaning you could trust them. When the file was sent, you opened it and your account was hacked, so if you didn't take caution right then and there, it was hard. The next APT I went over was UPS team. The reason I chose my APTs was because they all had something to do with spearfishing. It was just the different ways. This is known as the UPS team. It's also based out of China. The target suspects was China, and the victims were aerospace and defense, construction and engineering, high-tech, telecommunications, and transportation. This China-based group set this as an APT-3 and one of the more sophisticated threat groups. It was FireEye Threat Intelligence Tracks. They have a history of basically going through Explorer, Firefox, and Adobe Flash Player in order to exploit the target hosts. The associated malwares that were used was Shotput, Cookie Cutter, and Sogu. The attack vectors were phishing emails as well, same as before. But a neat trick that they used to disguise their thing and exploit was they would shellcode it into an Adobe Flash Player export file, which was easier to get use of. The next APT I went over was APT-10, MenuPass Team was the other name for it, another one located in China. The suspect was China, and the victims were construction engineering, aerospace and telecom firms, and governments in the United States, Europe, and Japan. So unlike the other two, this was based in Europe, Japan, and the United States. The overview was that it's a Chinese cyber espionage group, and it has been tracked since 2009. They historically targeted construction and engineering and aerospace and telecom firms in the United States, Europe, and Japan, and the targeting of these industries have supported Chinese national security goals. This is for valuable military intelligence information. The malware that they were using was Haymaker, Snugride, Bugjuice, and Quasarot. They also used spear phishing, but it was through a double extension and group meeting documents, and they would be accessing victims through global service providers like those. The next one I went to was APT-19, which is also known as Cardoso Team. They all have specific names that they are based off of, so you can't just look up APT-19, because I realized when looking up things like APT-19, it shows you apartments, and I didn't need apartments, I needed information. So the suspects here was also China, and the target sectors were legal and investment. The APT-19 group likely composed mostly of freelancers, so it wasn't people who were hired specifically to do this. They were hired specifically to do this, but it wasn't like one main group. They have some degree of sponsorship by the Chinese government. They used many different techniques in order to attempt their attacks for the vectors. They used phishing lures and attachments that exploited Microsoft Windows vulnerability described. So they went through mostly Excel to do this, and they bypassed a lot of documents using Excel documents. The malware was Beacon and Cobalt Strike that was used. The last APT I went over was APT-33. And unlike the others, this was the suspects was out of Iran, and the target sectors were aerospace and energy. What APT-33 targeted was organizations spanning multiple industries that were headquartered in the US, Saudi Arabia, and South Korea. So US is usually targeted, but Saudi Arabia and South Korea is new for these for spear phishing. APT-33 showed particular interest in organizations like aerospace and energy because they have military connections, and it will help them tie with the petrochemical production. The malware that was associated with this was Shapeshift, Dropshot, TurnedUp, Nanocore, Netwire, and AlphaShell. And just like the others, the vectors was sent spear phishing emails to employees whose jobs related to the aviation industry the same way, but this time it was through a malicious HTML file. So, to conclude, the reason I chose these 5 is because they're all related to spear phishing, and there's a lot of APTs that are related to spear phishing. But these 5 specifically are related to spear phishing, but not one of their malware is the same. So that's the thing. You might end, like in today's age, we might be able to stop something from happening one way and figure out how to work that, but there's always going to be the next step, and a lot of these basically suspects who do these things look into that. They use different types of malware. They use different types of ways, like going through HTML or email or Microsoft Excel, like your normal everyday things that you're going to look at. And that's what they continue to do until they eventually get the information they want, which can be really frustrating for many people because you're basically not sure when you're signing into something if it is a hack or not, because sometimes it goes unnoticed for months. I mean, the Marriott, a trusted hotel, just was hacked through the same way people were logging into their accounts, and because it came through a Microsoft email type file or Outlook type file, when they logged in, they were targeted. The only thing that these 5 have in common, or the only thing that these 5 don't have in common, is the malware. But they're all pretty much targeting military sectors, especially China, who is trying to get information. So it's scary to think about that. All the APTs coming back can not only destroy certain things like for your information, but it also can take on a deeper meaning, which is what they're trying to aim for. Military, things like that. They're trying to get information that one person might not think. They might think, oh, they just want my information for like my bank stuff, but that's not the case. They want further information. So that is the conclusion of my final project.